I'd just turned the light out and put my head on the pillow when I heard my mom's voice. The walls in her house are paper thin, and I was surprised to hear her on the phone so late at night. She was giggling and sounded excited, and I suddenly wondered if she was talking to a man. After the divorce, she hadn't dated anyone, and maybe this was exactly what she needed. I was almost asleep when I heard her say something weird, and suddenly I wasn't so tired anymore. I don't think one will be enough. I'd like to adopt 3 if that's okay. Can I come and get them tomorrow? I'm so excited. What did you say the youngest one was called? Monty? What a cute name. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mom was adopting 3 kids? I mean, I could understand if she wanted to adopt a cat or a dog or something, but 3 human beings? Wasn't 1 enough? After Dad got married again last year, Mom kind of went off the rails. She'd taken up flamenco dancing and started rock climbing, so I shouldn't have been surprised by this news. But why didn't she speak to me about it first? I really wanted to go straight through to her room and ask her what was going on. But she sounded so happy, and I knew I'd just ruin her night with my anger. But she'd ruined my night. I was 16. Why would I want 3 kids running around? Ugh, this was awful. The next morning, I woke up and she had already left for work. I found a note on the kitchen table from her that said, "Hey, Jody, have a great day. I have a big surprise for you. See you tonight." Yeah, it was certainly a big surprise. The worst kind of surprise. And that day at school was terrible. The whole time I kept thinking about what awaited me at home, the sleepless nights ahead. I realized I didn't even know if they were babies or kids or... Wait, what if they were teenagers too? No, she wouldn't dare. She'd seriously lost the plot. After school, I decided to go to my friend's house and hang out. The last place I wanted to go was back home. I kept checking my phone, expecting Mom to call or text me, but she didn't. She was obviously too busy with her 3 new kids and had probably forgotten about me already. Me and my friend started watching a new TV series, and by the time we finished a few episodes, it was like 9 p.m. I walked home and was surprised to see all the lights out. I'd assumed I'd see 3 little humans running around the lounge, but the house was quiet. Mom must have had a long day. She didn't usually go to bed so early. I was so tired too, after my sleepless night, so I went straight to bed. So much for a surprise. Maybe she changed her mind when she realized she wasn't up for changing diapers again. I talked to her about it in the morning and tried to get her to come to her senses, but I'd left it a little too late for that. I fell asleep really quickly, but after a few hours, I felt something cool on my pillow. I turned around to face the other way, and then I felt this weird pressure on my neck. I figured it was my blanket, so I pushed it away, but then it got tighter. I started to panic. Was I dreaming? I reached out for my lamp and turned it on in a panic. I was definitely awake. This was no dream. As soon as the light came on, I realized it wasn't my blanket around my neck. It was something cold and slimy, and it was moving. I screamed at the top of my lungs. I screamed so much I probably woke up the whole street. Around my neck was a snake. And it wasn't a tiny garden snake. It was a full-on python, and it was huge. I couldn't get it off my neck. I tried to pull it off, but its tongue was right by my ear, and it was hissing at me. What did the hissing mean? Was it going to bite me or try to swallow me whole? I was wrestling with it, but the more I tried to pull it off, the tighter it wound itself around my neck. The next moment, my mom came bursting into my room and also started screaming too and freaking out. "Mom, get this thing off me right now and kill it! Kill it before it kills me, please!" I screamed. My mom didn't say anything. She just ran towards me and lifted the snake off my neck and let it slither up her arm, then ran out of the room. "Get that thing out of this house right now! Where did it come from?" I rasped. I'd almost lost my voice from screaming so much. Then I suddenly thought, what if there are more? And that's when I jumped onto my bed and started jumping around squirming. Honestly, of all the things in the world to wake me up during the night, a snake of all things. Wait, what if it hurt my mom? "Mom, are you okay? Have you killed it yet?" I waited for her reply, but she didn't. She was acting so weird. I panicked. What if the snake had killed her first? Was that why she wasn't replying? I ran downstairs and noticed the light was on in the kitchen. I still couldn't hear her. I ran in there almost skidding and banging into the fridge, and that's when I spotted her. She was sitting on the floor, stroking the snake. "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?" I yelled at her. "Get rid of it already," I said, backing out the door slowly. "Jody, calm down, please. There's something I need to tell you. Follow me to the lounge." "Mom, I'm not going anywhere with you and that creature," I shrieked. I was properly shaking. Mom turned on the light in the lounge, and that's when I spotted it. A huge glass tank sitting by the window. I gasped. Surely not. Honey, I told you I had a surprise. Please don't be mad. I know I should have told you beforehand, but I just couldn't wait. Allow me to introduce you to Monty, Noodle, and Cuddles. I believe you and Cuddles already got to meet. He's not called Cuddles for nothing, you know. Then she laughed. She laughed! Was my mom sick in the head? 3 snakes! And then it clicked. The phone call. I just assumed she was adopting 3 kids, but she'd adopted 3 snakes? This was madness! I still felt like the snake was around my neck and shivered. Mom could see how disturbed I was and apologized for accidentally leaving the tank open. She hadn't thought snakes could climb up the stairs, she said. I was so angry I couldn't even stand there. It was the middle of the night, but I couldn't spend another second near those disgusting snakes. Mom, it's either me or the snakes. You choose, but until you decide, you won't be seeing me. I'm going to Grandma's. You're crazy, do you know that? I shouted at her as I ran upstairs to pack my stuff. Then I just left at 3 a.m. without even saying goodbye. I felt a bit scared walking to Grandma's in the dark, but that was nothing compared to living in a house with 3 snakes. Grandma got such a fright when I banged on the door, but when I explained what had happened, she just shook her head. She was used to Mom doing crazy things and promised me she'd speak to her. I kind of expected Mom to stop me leaving or at least come and try and persuade me to come back home the next day, but she didn't. Grandma tried to call her, but she didn't even pick up. She just texted Grandma saying sorry. She had her hands full at the moment and would call back soon. I couldn't believe it. It was like she'd replaced me with 3 snakes. One afternoon, I got home from school and was sitting at Grandma's dining table doing my homework. Something caught my eye and I looked up and I could not believe what I was seeing. Walking down the street was my mom and the 3 snakes. Yeah, seriously, she had 2 wrapped around her neck and 1 curled up on her shoulder. I stared in shock, my mouth wide open. I noticed the lady across the street had also spotted my mom, but she wasn't just staring, she was screaming, and I saw her run inside her house. Mom glanced towards Grandma's house and I ducked. I didn't want to speak to her, and I definitely didn't want those snakes anywhere near me. For the next few days, the same thing kept happening. And then one day, I used Grandma's binoculars and took a closer look. I almost dropped them when I realized what I was seeing. Each of the snakes had little hats on. Little pointy woolen hats. Okay, it was official. My mom was crazy. This couldn't go on any longer. That night, I walked over to our house and I was about to go in when I saw a pest control van parked in the driveway. I waited at the side of the house for them to leave. Eventually, 2 men came out and I heard one of them saying, "They're harmless at least, but I'm not sure about that woman. Did you see the way she looked at those snakes? And don't get me started on those hats, she's a nutter." Then they laughed and climbed into their van and drove off. I ran into the house and Mom was sitting on the sofa crying with all 3 snakes on her lap. She saw me standing there and apologized, wiping away her tears and quickly put the snakes back into their tank. Suddenly, it annoyed me that people thought my mom was a nutter. Even at school, the son of the woman who lived across from Grandma had started calling me Snake Girl. I guess I'd also thought my mom was crazy though, but she wasn't crazy, she was just crazy about her snakes. To me, they'd seemed disgusting, but now, seeing her here crying because pest control had tried to come and take them away from her, I realized how much they meant to her. Some people like dogs, and then there's people like my mom who just happen to like snakes. There was nothing I could do about it. I could keep living at Grandma's, or I could suck it up and come home and find a way to love these snakes as much as my mom did, even if Cuddles hadn't exactly made a good first impression. Jody, I miss you so much. I love these snakes, but if it means you'll come home, I'll get rid of them, okay? Please just come home, baby. Wow, I wasn't expecting my mom to say that. I thought about it for a few seconds, and then I did something totally out of character. I went over to Mom, picked up one of the snakes, and let it slither up my arm. Mom stared at me in disbelief and started grinning. "So does that mean I can keep them?" she said, laughing. And that is how I found myself living with 3 snakes. I won't lie, I'm still seriously afraid they'll come to my room again, but I bought the biggest padlock in the world, and every night before bed, I make sure they're properly locked up. Mom is seriously obsessed, and now I just have to laugh about it all. The other day, she put them on her head and pretended to be Medusa and started chasing me around the house. Honestly, she loves those snakes. She even created an Instagram page for them, and she has so many followers. People really love the little hats she's made for them, and we've joked that she should turn it into a business. Hats for snakes. Who knows, maybe it'll be the next big trend. Cuddles is my favorite. He is actually quite friendly, but I won't let him anywhere near my neck. I'm not ready for that again.
Hello, my name is Becca. Even though I'm still young, I went through something horrible most people never go through. I was jailed. I was sent away to a juvenile detention center. Now, I'm not trying to make excuses for the things that I have done, but I want to share the traumatic experience I had at such a young age. Let's just say that no teenager should ever have to go through that. My story started when I began taking driving lessons. I was really enjoying my lessons and was always excited for the next lesson to come. My boyfriend Dan was already driving, and he had a really fancy car that his parents had bought him as a gift. Dan was really nice. He drove me to every place you could think of in that car, and I always envied him for having a driving license, unlike me. Only if I knew that my love for that car was going to change my reality. One night, Dan and I were in his car around the neighborhood. I was telling him how much I was fascinated by his car. Dan then offered to let me drive it, but I laughed and said that I wish. But Dan was serious. He said that there was no one around, and just a driver on the block would do no harm. I refused at first, but Dan kept pushing me to do it, so I eventually agreed. And it was awesome. The car ran so smoothly, and I drove around the block like a pro. But it didn't stop there. I wanted more. I took us to another neighborhood, and I was having so much fun. I turned on the music to full volume and smiled and went a bit faster. I took a look at Dan. He was such a wonderful boyfriend, I thought. He looked back at me and smiled. When suddenly we heard a loud sound and I stopped the car immediately. Oh my God, I thought. I hit something. Dan and I got out quickly. We saw a man lying on the floor. He looked dead. Oh my God, what have I done? I was panicking. I can't even remember much of that night, but I remember that I hurried back into the car with Dan and drove off without thinking. Hours after, police officers were knocking at my door, and that was the night my life went downhill. Even though the man I hit didn't die, I was charged with driving without a license and a hit-and-run attempt. At that point, I had lost all contact with Dan. A couple of months after my 16th birthday, I was sentenced to a year in juvie. It felt like everything was spiraling out of control. I remember them putting me into a bus with a bunch of girls, some older than me, some much younger. It all seemed surreal to me as I stared out of the window. When I first entered the building, I noticed the number of guards standing around. It was unnerving to see them standing with a look on their face like they dared you to step out of line. The line I was in inched closer and closer towards the front until my name was called. I always hated going to the doctor, but this situation was different. They sat me down in a chair and asked question after question, each one more personal than the last. This was done while sitting next to a wide open door, a guard right outside, the line for the next girl not too far away, and other inmates and staff members walking past. To say that I felt exposed was an understatement. All the details of my life were aired out in front of strangers. After the seemingly unending questions, I was given a full examination. I thought the full-body pat-down by the man at the front was bad, but this was more touch, twist, and pull than I was comfortable with. The woman conducting the exam would keep saying, "Hold still," even though she was the one moving me, twisting my body into even more awkward positions, which would cause me to lose my balance. This earned me another stern look and a hard grasp of the shoulders. I was so happy when it was done, thinking that it couldn't get any worse. Then I met my roommate. She was a tall girl who must have been my age or a year older. When I entered, she gave me a look filled with caution and anger. The guard left, and she started to speak. She pointed her finger around the room. "This is my space, and it's been my space for years." Then she pointed to a small corner near the bed. "You can settle for that space over there." Her voice was absolute. She didn't wait for me to answer as she turned her back. I didn't want to cause trouble, so I sat there thinking about what I had gotten myself into and how the time would pass in this miserable place. The time I spent outside of my room was a nightmare. I was always the quiet type. I would rather spend my time alone than in a group. I wish I would have known that in juvie, it was the same as painting a target on your back. I got teased a lot. My My things were thrown onto the floor, I was pushed from behind, tripped, punched, and even kicked. The treatment wasn't anything I wasn't used to, so I endured for a while until I had enough. I fought back and immediately got in trouble. The guards didn't help the inmates. Apparently that wasn't their job. Most of the time they would turn a blind eye until it escalated from a scuffle to a full-out brawl. They seemed to follow a motto: if we don't need to be involved, we won't. If we do need to get involved, you better hope you're not the reason. That's why most fights got resolved between the inmates. When the guards came to pull us apart, they pushed and pulled, then hit us until we complied. It felt worse than the actual fight. One time, I got in trouble with one of the inmates. She was big and strong, and she started attacking me because I didn't want to give her my pillow and blanket. However, things escalated quickly, and I found myself getting into a physical fight with her. She was terrifying, and she was attacking me without even making a notable effort. After a few minutes, something happened that made her go away. She went away. Finally, I thought, but that was when I felt a strong hand on my shoulder, and when I looked behind me, it was another scary inmate. She smiled at me and said, "No worries, sugar, I got you." I told her thanks and was about to walk away, but that's when I felt her pulling my hand aggressively. "What do you want?" I asked her. She said, "I just did you a favor, baby girl. Aren't you planning to return it back?" As she said these words, she started touching me in an uncomfortable way. She had her hands all over my body as if she owned me, and the look in her eyes made me shiver. At some point, I managed to escape her grope and go to my cell. A year after, I was released back into the world. I was 17 years old and close to being free to live my life. It was supposed to be a relief, but I couldn't get my time in there out of my head. Every person I walked past on the street, I saw as an enemy. This only got worse when I was sent back for my last year of school.